All right, guys, welcome to April of 2024. Guys, this month, this was it. This was the most historic month maybe ever, maybe the most historic event ever in UFC history. We just went through January, February, and March. And now we finally got to April. 3 events, 2 of them in the apex. The other one is, of course, the mega of them all, UFC 300 T-Mobile Arena. So all 3 events, they never left Nevada in the month of April. So let's start at the beginning. Go to the on April 6th at the UFC Apex, really high-end main event in the middleweight division. Brendan All-In Allen against Christopher Curtis. This is their rematch. Great fight. Great fight. I watched this fight probably 3-4 times. Really close fight. Brendan Allen wins via split decision. I remember there was some controversial people on both sides of it. Great fight. Both great fighters. I loved it. I'm really high on both of these guys. So I really loved that main event. And the whole time they were just prepping us, getting us ready to the mega UFC 300. Also, bonuses on that was Jose Mariscal versus Morgan Charrier. Also, Ignacio Bananas and Cesar Almeida. Sorry, say all those names 5 times fast. I'm doing every month of the year. So, good card on the Apex, mainly about that main event. Gets us into the probably the most epic show in UFC history. There it is, UFC 300. I wish they didn't have just those 3 fights, and they were the main, the co, and the featured. They should have every fight, and we're going to really do that, guys. We're going to really get into UFC 300 at the T-Mobile Center, T-Mobile Arena. Over 20,000 people. The gate was insane. Over 16.5 million was the gate on April 13th, this epic show. And we all know it. We're going to break it all down. I'm going to give you every single fight because it's that good of a card. But definitely the main in that feature fight took everything. Guys, it was the card from the get-go. It was the most ridiculous card ever to be put together. When the first fight of the night is Davison Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt, both former champions, and Figgy had a really good year. You know where you're going with it. So Figgy defeated Cody Garbrandt. Second fight of the night, Bobby Green defeated Jim Miller. Jessica Andrade split decision win against Marina Rodriguez. The main event of the early prelims was Moicano. Great year, 3-0. One of the better years in all of the UFC. Had a comeback TKO win against Jalen Turner. And then those 4 prelims, guys. These prelims are, any of them can be fight night main events. Diego Lopez, another fighter of the year candidate, 3-0, beat Sadiq Youssef. Kayla Harrison in her UFC debut. A lot of people have her as UFC Female Fighter of the Year. She submitted Holly Holm in the second round. Aljamain Sterling got a unanimous decision against Calvin Kattar in his featherweight debut. And Yuri Prohasic gets a TKO. And one of the better fights of the night against Alexander Rakic. Phenomenal. Like I said, cannot even express how good those prelims were. Main card, Bo Nickel, second round, submission, rear naked choke against Cody Brundage. Everyone, that was the fight that people were super upset that was on the main card, but Bo Nickel is a freaking superstar, so he gets it. This fight can main event a pay-per-view in 2025. Arman Sarukian defeats Charles Oliveira in a split decision. Great fight, a very close fight. Split decision win for him. Then we got 3 fights left. I'm going to skip the featured actually for a second. Wei Li dominated one-way traffic against Yan, defends her championship as the strawweight champion. And then we get into our featured and our main event, guys. The featured fight was Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje for the BMF championship. Gaethje was the champion coming in. Maybe the greatest moment in UFC history. Maybe the greatest knockout in UFC history. I heard it's one of the greatest wins of all time with Max Holloway. Moving up in weight, putting on a show for the fans. It was just, it's so hard to talk about it now here in December, going back on it. It was just the perfect fight for UFC 300. It just doesn't get better than that. That's us. That's MMA at the pinnacle. Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje and just a stand-up war. The moment, him pointing down, and then the knockout to end the night. Just all-time stuff. All-time stuff. That fight will go into the UFC Hall of Fame, should be first ballot. Both of those fighters are UFC future Hall of Famers. Just an all-time stuff right there in the featured. The main event. my fighter of the year, his first fight of the 2024, Alex Pereira. First round knockout of Jamal Hill. Jamal Hill was the champion, got hurt. This was kind of putting the title back together. We all remember, it's so funny, like UFC 300, you could do this or you could do this, and we all know what you mean. He kind of was a minor low blow. Alex Pereira says, no, thank you. Herb Dean gets the knockout, the hook of doom, you know it. So just an incredible card. Like, I'm looking it back over right now. I remember I did watch it twice that week. Some of the fights are just forever fights. Some of these guys, and girls, there's unlimited Hall of Famers on this card. Just an all-time card. One of them, probably to this day, probably will never be duplicated. The greatest built card of all time. The bonuses of that night, remember, they all got $300,000 each because of UFC 300. Bonus was Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje. And then he gave another knockout bonus to Max Holloway, so $600,000 in bonuses. And then the other one was Yuri Prochazka, well, he deserved. So incredible night. I know a lot of people were disappointed in the meantime, of the main event of Alex and Jamal Hill, but didn't disappoint. And I think in a weird way, that main event gets bigger and bigger at times. Especially, it seems like they are going to buck horns once again. And Alex Pereira is the face of the UFC. So there we go, UFC 300. They skip a week. They go on a little mini vacay on 420. They're back on 427. Back in the Apex in a flyweight division fight, Matthews Nicolau versus Alex Perez. That was supposed to be Nicolau versus Cap, but now Cap got hurt, couldn't do it. Alex Perez steps up on short notice and gets a second round knockout win. Really kind of had an upswing for Alex Perez here in 2024. So Alex Perez wins it. The bonuses were Alex Perez, Bodog Gossif, which is second bonus of the year so far, and Uris Metric. And it's weird. This night, and I remember it very vividly, this night on 427 to me will always be remembered as Joe Martinez, who does it all the time for Bruce Buffer. He does the ring announcements. He got sick during the card, started the card, got sick, and Charlie Arnold stepped up. She does a lot of the post-fight interviews backstage, works for UFC, ESPN, that kind of thing. She stepped up and to do those post-fight interviews, also ring announcing, and make history that night as the first ever female ring announcer for the UFC. So, weird thing, not a lot of highlights on this card, not a lot of big moments. Perez, a big win for him to close out April, but the moment of that card was Charlie Arnold stepping up to do the ring announcing, first ever female of all time. But put a bow on April. It was a one-card show, and that card deserved all 31 days. Alex Pereira, Max Holloway are the absolute superstars of that. But I'm telling you guys, Moyo Kano, Kayla Harrison, and Yuri Prochazka really did a lot to morph and shape that card into one of the greatest cards in the history of the UFC. Incredible. UFC 300, April 2024. We're done. We'll see you guys